Braylon Mullins is the best shooter you don't know about. Let's lock in and find out more.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Thanks as always for making us your first listen of the day. My name's Albert Gim, always here with my co-host, Corey Tulaba. We're really excited to be here. We're getting really close. College basketball, draft season, everything's getting closer. As you guys know, football's back. So once football comes back and then there's talk about like baseball playoffs, that's when you know we're getting really close. And so, as I mentioned, I'm here with my co-host, Corey Tulaba, as always. Corey, you've had a very busy day. How are you doing? How are you holding up? What's going on with you, brother?
You know what? I am flying high. I had an amazing weekend. That was like a culmination of a lot of hard work for the group of friends that I grew up with. They played in a punk rock band, for almost 20 years now. And when you start like 20 years ago, your goal back then was to play a show with Blink 182. And this weekend, they got to share a stage in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Steel City Real, baby. They got to play a show with Blink 182. And, it was an amazing experience. The festival, Four Chord Music Festival that goes on every year, is such a fun festival with a lot of great bands put on by a great dude named Rishi, who really embodies the DIY ethos, to the point where he was on stage last year and told Live Nation, who was trying to buy the festival from him, words I can't repeat on this podcast because he just wanted to do the festival himself. So it was just amazing. Blink was awesome. And seeing my friends, these people I spent 8 years in a van with and then in a bus with, get to do this thing in front of thousands of people and play with Blink. It rocked. And it makes me excited and gives me the energy I need to talk hoops today, man.
I mean, Corey, that sounds incredible. There's a message, there's a lesson in there somewhere, right? Don't quit, don't give up. Hey, Corey, I'm really excited to be here to record with you. We're going to get into all the small things of, you like that one, of Braylon Mullins, a guy that, Corey, you brought up to me recently and was like, hey, you were like, Albert, I know the type of guys you like. The type of players you like. Maybe I should clean that up a little bit. The type of players you like. And you told me, check out Braylon Mullins. I did. And I had an absolute blast. And so I'm really excited to get into his game. But Corey, before we get into the offense like we usually do, give us the breakdown. Let's get into the lab. Professor Tulaba, give us our intro on Braylon Mullins.
So Braylon Mullins headed to UConn. He's a shooting guard listed at 6'6", 196 via the UConn team site. He will be 20.17 years old on draft night. He was a McDonald's All-American. He attended Greenfield Central Public High School in Indiana. He was Indiana Gatorade Player of the Year, 2025 Indiana Mr. Basketball. Prestigious career in Indiana, which is a basketball hotbed, right? According to the UConn team site, his public school stats, he averaged 32.9 points, 7.2 rebounds, 4.2 assists, and 3.7 steals while shooting over 47% from three. So we have a sniper on our hands here. Just an absolute, dead-eye shooter. And, it's a public school, so you go, all right, this kid, 5-star McDonald's All-American, he should be dominating public schools. In 20 games on the 3SSB circuit with Indy Elite, he averaged 19.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2.6 assists to 2.2 turnovers, 1.5 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 48, 42, 85 splits. He shot 42% on 8.8 3-point attempts per game on that circuit, 64.2 true shooting, 61.6 effective field goal. This kid can shoot the cover off of the ball, and he's headed to UConn, and that is just a fun marriage, between prospect and team.
What an intro to a player, right? And sometimes, Corey, when we get into the stats of a player, as you mentioned, public school, right? Sometimes the numbers might be a little inflated. Also, we don't know who's, keeping score. Some of the stats might be a little
definitely somebody who's not getting paid enough to do the book. Probably like the science teacher or something.
Or it could be like some random sophomore who's struggling with math and, fudges some of the numbers.
The JV team manager.
There it is. But Corey, overall, I think if we go over his whole profile, and what's more important is, regardless of the counting stats that you just rattled off, which were really impressive to hear, the film kind of backs everything up, right? So that's where we want to kind of get into Braylon Mullins' game here, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I just want to start off by saying, Corey, you were absolutely spot on when you were like, this is your type of player. Corey knows I really like any shooter that's like 6'5" and taller, who has like a little extra like shooter plus, or like Corey likes to say 3-and-D plus type of guys. Like those guys are kind of my bread and butter that I really enjoy. A couple of things that I want to bring up before I hand it over to you, Corey, to kind of go over his offense. As much as I want to start off with the shooting, the thing that stuck out to me the most that I love was the intelligence. But he's a really smart player. I really enjoyed the pace that he plays with. There are moments where you can feel that he's excited and he's playing like pretty high pace. But then also there are moments where you can feel him just kind of putting out his tentacles and like feeling what's going on the floor, what's going on with his teammates, and then him realizing like he doesn't, obviously he's a guy that can play with or without the ball, but more importantly, when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, Corey, I felt like he did such a good job of moving in space to create opportunities for himself or for his teammates. And that's something, Corey, that I think gets underrated sometimes, because when we talk about selflessness, a lot of that kind of correlates to passing. But I thought like just his awareness and feel and just productivity on the floor without the ball, I thought was really, really impressive. And with that as well, like I thought just overall his game is the flashy marquee skill is going to be the shooting, but I thought there was a really nuanced, like intelligent, beautiful aspect of his game too that I thought was very refined. And then I thought, and I think that Coach Hurley at UConn is really going to enjoy, and I feel like is going to set him up to be a key contributor as a freshman, because I think the way that he processes and feels the game is higher than maybe his age. And so that's kind of where I kind of wanted to start. Corey, if you can give us some of your insight on what you saw as you dove into his offensive tape.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. I put in my notes, I think multiple times, like he plays 0.5 basketball. So whether that means like he's catching and shooting and like not hesitating, right? We've talked about prospects in the past with their shooting where it's like, okay, it looks kind of okay, but it looks like they're thinking about shooting it. Like if he's going to shoot it, it's because he made that decision in 0.5 seconds, right? If he's going to move the ball, he's moving it. He already knows where the ball is going to go. So that 0.5 feel that we talk about, that is so important in the modern NBA, he has that, right? You talked about like the high pace, and like maybe I would refer to it not so much like high pace, because that almost sounds like he's playing sped up, but more like he's got like his motor's running hot. Like he plays hard, right? It's not like he's speeding himself up or letting other people speed him up necessarily. It's just like this dude is on go, right? And that's like the type of dude that Hurley likes for UConn, right? And that is awesome, because a dude whose motor is on go means he's always moving. And a lot of times we talk about space creation, right? That's like a hot buzzword in the scouting community, space creation. And like Braylon Mullins doesn't have like on the ball, like wiggle. He's got a very functional handle, but like he's not a guy who's going to just go cook in isolation. But it doesn't mean he's not creating space, because there are so many times where he's running off of an action and his defender just loses track of where he is because he's been run through a couple of screens, right? It's very like, old school Clay and Steph Warriors or Ray Allen, maybe Jordan Hawkins, where like he's just always in constant motion. And that leads to him getting clean looks either behind the 3-point line or even at the rim. And that rim pressure that he provides is really interesting, because this is a guy, this type of player typically is not the kind of guy that you think like, oh, he's also really efficient or effective at the rim, right? And he is. He's very good at the rim. I mean, I have him on the 3SSB circuit. His public school didn't have a ton of games to break down, but he was 65.7 overall, 57.7 in the half court. He had 19 dunks in 20 games. So like he's really good all over the floor. And again, like we haven't even mentioned that, like how quick of a release he has, how buttery smooth. He's parking lot range, like he's a really fun offensive prospect that is just born to play the shooting guard role at UConn.
No, Corey, I love it really quickly. I love the Jordan Hawkins shout out because for me, and I'm not even saying that they're like the same player or anything like that, but the reason why I think Coach Hurley loved Hawkins so much is exactly what you talked about, Corey, because he created opportunities and advantages with his movement off the ball, right? And him being such this like tireless engine trying to get open and to move all around the floor. And I think Mullins is going to bring that as well. And to your point, Corey, about his finishing, the thing that I wrote here in my notes is that he's not the biggest guy. You look at him, he doesn't look like who's a big, strong guy. He doesn't look like Davion Mitchell at the same age, probably.
Lou Dort.
Lou Dort, but not afraid of contact. And that's something that really
tough.
Surprised me. Yeah, he's very tough. And what I wrote here is he's not the best at absorbing contact, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't shy from it. And I think that's important, right? Because sometimes you get these like slider frame guys who end up being afraid of contact and then they miss out on opportunities to go to the line or whatever. And I think that's really good. And another area where you see some of that toughness is when you watch him on the offensive boards, he'll go down there and mix it up with the trees. And I was like, what's going on here? 6'5" guard. He's jumping. He's timing it off the rim, going up there, battling with bigs. And I was like, oh, this is a grittiness and a toughness that like a crazy coach like Dan Hurley is going to absolutely love. Like Coach Hurley being a maniac is going to look at Mullins as like, oh, this kid he's me. He's got my DNA in him. He's going to absolutely love that. And so, Corey, like I just felt like the beautiful mixture that he has of being a really intellectual player with high feel, but also plays extremely hard, is willing to get his hands dirty, right? I think all of that coming together is actually a very special player that I think, and we talked about it today, right? Our cold open was Braylon Mullins, the best shooter you don't know about. That's just kind of the intro to his game, but he's a very good player that a lot of our listeners and viewers today may not know about. And I think that's like the real thing that I kind of hope our listeners walk away with is he's not going to be just a shooter. And I'm really excited to see how Coach Hurley gives him the opportunity to kind of show all of that because he's a very complete offensive player that plays with a gritty toughness that I think is really, really special. And I can't wait to see what that looks like. But actually, Corey, really quickly before we go to break, I just wanted to ask you this. I thought at times with his jumper that he had a little bit of the snake biting stuff. Did that bother you at all?
No, it doesn't bother me because I think like there's a difference when you're snake biting it because it's like you need to get the shot off quickly. And you're trying not to allow like the defender who's got a hand in your face to like get a piece of the ball. And there are times where like it's okay to snake bite. Now, what I will say is I do think his release could be like a little low. So like there are times that people are going to be able to contest him in a real way. And I think he's so good of a shooter that like it's not going to manifest itself in this big problem. I think that the scouting discourse with him as to when we're discussing like what range should he get drafted in, what does his upside look like, it is just like, can he show any kind of on-ball creation? We saw Liam McNeely didn't shoot the ball well last year, but because of UConn's context, he had a lot of opportunity to play with the ball in his hands and become kind of like a pseudo point guard at times. And this UConn roster construction is a lot more suited for a guy like a Liam McNeely, like a Braylon Mullins. So I don't know if we'll see him operate in that role as much, but that's kind of, I think, where you would say like the limits to his game would appear. But as a shooter, like I just think he's going to be so good and so versatile in his shot profile, catch and shoot, transition, motion. And sometimes I think, he'll be able to shoot it off the bounce, but he's just a good offensive player that's going to bring so much value. And then the question is going to be like, does he go as high as a Con Knipple, or is he going at the back end of the lottery like a Jordan Hawkins, or does he have a down shooting year? People kind of question it, have to go back to the high school tape, and maybe he's a Liam McNeely. And so that's the kind of range situation I think we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, Corey. It feels like our kind of takeaway with his offense is he's a first round talent, lotto talent in terms of an offensive player. But as exciting as he is on the offensive end, after this break, we're going to get into the defensive side. So lock in with us and we'll be right back. Most people, and this is most people, can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or their properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving some money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all in one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Corey and I were both young, new, early parents, right? And we've got families, and Corey's got a mortgage. We got a lot of stuff going on, right? Having a tool like Monarch Money that makes it easier to kind of organize your finances, see where your money's going, and see where there might be opportunities to invest for the future and for our families. I mean, that's something you should be excited about. And so don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. All right, guys, we are back. And we spent that first segment really excited about Braylon Mullins as an offensive player. Now, this Corey, we're gonna get into his defense. I think I'm gonna kind of I don't know, what was it called, bearing the lead here or whatever, but I really like him as a defender too. And so, and some of our listeners, you like, okay, like you guys just really love the kid, blah blah blah. But Corey, like I think there's some real stuff to him, and there is a correlation to some of the stuff that we talked about on the offensive end of the ball. We talked about how gritty he is, how willing he is to get his hands dirty, how he's a very intellectual player, right? Good foundation. I think all of that translates to the defensive side of the ball too. I really liked him as a defender, a guy who's 6'5". I actually don't remember. Corey, did you have his wingspan or not? I don't remember.
No, I couldn't find a wingspan.
No. But also, it for me, at least from my eye test, it didn't look like a negative wingspan or anything like that. But I just thought he was a very sneaky, good defender. Or maybe I shouldn't even throw in that sneaky part as a qualifier. Maybe he's just a good defender. And so, Corey, if you can give us your breakdown on what you saw with Braylon Mullins and the type of defensive player that you think he's going to be.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, you had me there. I thought you were the way you introed it in, that maybe you thought he wasn't that good of a defender, and I was like, oh man, we're gonna have to get into a first take style debate here. But I agree, man. Like,
yeah,
one, like, we talked about his competitiveness, right, and his motor. Like, defensively, you need to have a motor. If you're just, that motor is only one way, coaches aren't going to care. And the fact that he has that motor defensively too, I think is really important. We talked about his processing. You mentioned that intellect. That is like why he's so good, like at stripping the ball or deflecting the ball, getting in the passing lanes. It's why he averaged almost 4 steals a game, in the public school, and then nearly 2 in the 3SSB. So like it shows up on that end, but then he can really slide, and he plays with his chest. Like he could flip his hips. Dude, he had a possession against Elijah Arenas, who's super shifty, bucket getting guard. And it was just straight up clamps. Like he just shadowed him every step of the way. And, he's going to have his challenges, because right now he is slight of frame. He's listed at almost 200 pounds on UConn's website. So we'll see. I think he's like wiry strong, but like, obviously I think people will still be able to move him, if they're grown men, as plenty are in college basketball. But like on the ball, he's good. And then he's really good positionally. So like, that's where, again, some of this weak side stuff comes in. Like he knows where to be on the floor. He's not going to necessarily like make poor decisions that you would see out of young players, like helping off the strong corner. Like he knows how to not make mistakes too. So while he's like creating events and like guarding on the ball, he's also not hurting you off of the ball. And, that's not something you can say for every young player. So I think he's going to add value on that end. I don't think he's ever going to end up on an all defense team. I don't think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think people are going to use his defense as the first thing on the scouting report or what they say about him on podcasts or videos. But I think that he's going to be a two-way player. And so, I think you look at him and you want to judge him because here's this like long, like lean, lanky kid. And again, we don't know what his wingspan is. And I don't even know if I would say he looks long, but because he's lean, like maybe he does have decent length, But a lot of these shooters who are really great shooters typically don't have like plus wingspans. It's just like not like a quality you find on the best shooter. So I would say it's probably about even, maybe +1 or minus, whatever. But again, I think he's a two-way player. I think the defense, you watch him, you're really pleased. I do wish that I went and watched the Phenom United game and I was like, all right, I want to see possessions on Darren Peterson and like how he handles that. Right. And he didn't guard Darren in that game. And I was kind of bummed about that because Darren spent some possessions on him and he was knocking down shots in his eye, like even when he was tightly guarded. So I wanted to see it on the other end too. I didn't get to see it. So, how he handles some of these elite scorers, is going to be interesting. And I think defensively, the 3SSB tape is the tape that you have to watch. And, that's also kind of unfortunate because there's a whole season of development after that. But like defensively in the public school, dude, they're playing 3-2, they're pressing, and like he's the tallest dude on the court. So it's just like it's like the gimmicky public high school thing. You're not necessarily getting what you want to see out of it, but he showed enough on the 3SSB circuit. And then, we'll see what he looks like physically after, because that season's going to end February, March-ish, whatever, depending on whatever state you're in. So, the season's going to start and it's going to be months and months and months of him developing his body and getting better. So I can't wait to see what it looks like on a larger scale.
Yeah, no, Corey, I absolutely love everything that you said because, and I'm sorry if my lead was a little misleading at the top, but I just, for me, I just, man, the thing that was most important to me was, and it correlates to his like inside scoring too. He plays with physicality, even though he's lacking a little physicality, right? And it's that thing, Corey, where it almost like even correlates to when we talk about guys that aren't like finished shooters yet, but they keep taking them with confidence because they're growing and they're trying to get better. And I think with him as a defender, like the combination of him being a very intelligent defender, but also is willing to kind of like really engage with guys. When you talked about like the shadowing too, like it felt like a very good NFL corner that like, tries their best to be physical without committing, a penalty or getting called for defensive pass interference. Like there's that aspect of his game too, where you feel that intelligence and grittiness, but then he's really trying not to foul and he's trying to stay disciplined. I was like, oh, this is really beautiful and like a really strong foundational base that he's going to build off of as he continues to grow. And the last thing that I want to say, Corey, before we go to break is that I watched a couple of his interviews that are online. He did a Locked On one, a Locked On UConn interview, and just the way that he talks about the game got me really encouraged as well. He's got a great enthusiasm. He's really serious about his growth. And then I saw another pod where they were talking about like his dad, like telling Coach Hurley, like, I want you to coach my son really hard. Like, do not let him be an entitled brat or anything like that. Just be tough on him. And so I really think, Corey, like sometimes you never know what you're going to get with a freshman. And to be in a demanding context, like he's going to be with Coach Hurley, but I think this one's going to work out. And I think he's going to be a very solid defender with a lot to like. And so we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some guys that remind us of Braylon Mullins that have played in the league before or currently playing now. But we'll get back to that right after this break. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. That's a lot of flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love about what you have to love most about them is how portable they are. If you're on the in the if you're in the field playing golf, fits in your bag. If you're playing tennis, throw it in your bag. If you're playing basketball, all right, you need a bag for everything, but you get what I'm saying. It's very portable, right? Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. So, guys, with 5-hour energy, enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Corey, we're pumped. It's our favorite part. This is where we make the money. But okay, comps. Okay, we talked a lot about what we like on both ends of the floor. A very intriguing player. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you, Corey. I actually had some trouble this time.
Yeah, it was hard.
It was difficult. I have two guys. I don't even love the two guys that I have, but Corey, if you can give us some of your guys that you feel like, you were kind of reminded of while you were watching Braylon Mullins' tape.
Yeah. So it's super high end comp for him. Okay. Like everything works out. He hits, the offense clicks. It looks like it did at the high school level. And not prime Ray Allen. Okay. Not Seattle Supersonics, not Milwaukee Bucks, who's creating his own shot and is shifty, but Celtics, Miami Heat, Ray Allen, a guy who was running off a ton of motion, quick trigger, was operating mostly off the ball, cutting, and if he was attacking, it was mostly in a straight line. Celtics Ray Allen still had a little bit of bounce, but wasn't, going to be in a dunk contest like he could have been, in his Milwaukee days. So his game was a little bit more dialed back to fit in as the third option, right, on that big three, or to play off of the actual big three in Miami. So that was my higher end comp, because that version of Ray Allen in Boston was still an all-star type player, right, who can impact winning, but he wasn't the man. And because I don't think Braylon Mullins is ever going to be the man. Some more mid-level, maybe a Dante DiVincenzo. This is a parking lot range, high motor, dog energy. I think Braylon Mullins might be a little taller than Dante. Dante is going to create his own shot a little bit, but it's more like heat checky.
Yeah.
And then maybe shades of a guy like Grayson Allen, who again is dead eye shooter, really talented ancillary piece that could help accent, your stars who got paid a lot of money and had a long NBA and still has an NBA career. So those are the type of guys that I was kind of thinking about when I was doing the comp, but I had a hard time because, with his high school tape, it's hard to make that comp.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Corey, once again, I also had a really hard time, but I do unfortunately, I also had Dante DiVincenzo was one of the guys that I had. Not a white guy thing, shooter, intangibles, gritty. If you remember Dante at Villanova, was just a guy who was doing everything on the floor.
Big shot maker.
Huge, went crazy in the national championship game. I have one guy. He's kind of a low end comp even for me. I think is kind of where I'm at mentally. But a guy like Kerry Kittles, back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Kerry Kittles,
Villanova in the house.
Another Nova guy, but didn't have the longest career, right? But he had injuries and a lot of different things going on with him. But
was a good player for the Nets.
That's a good player that was a part of a team that made the finals, right? A guy who was very solid in what he did, had a very clear, defined role, was a good scorer, good shooter, just a very solid NBA player, but was very valuable too, and had some really good seasons. Was in double digits almost every year except for like his last when his body was really kind of betraying him, and really I think he retired at like really young, like 30 or 31 or something like that. So a guy who didn't have the longest career, but I could see Braylon Mullins having that type of role. Is kind of weird, I thought. Another guy that I don't I don't even want to say this one. I'll just stop there at Kittles and Dante because I don't love this other one that I had. I was
I like
thinking
the
of like
mystery
Jaden
of it though.
I'll just say it, Jaden Hardy.
Okay.
I was just like, I don't love this one either, but I just threw it in there because
Hey man, look, there are outcomes that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Jaden Hardy, he's still, still in the league. He's still got a shot.
Right.
He's a young player. But sometimes, like Jaden Hardy was, I think he was the number one guy on our board coming into the year, or he was up there at least, right? So this preseason, these things are fluid, man. So I see the Jaden Hardy comp as far as like why you would make it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And guys, as much as we really enjoyed Braylon Mullins' game, before we go, did want to mention the Locked On NBA Top 100 is here, voted on by the NBA hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every day. So you can find the full list on Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. As always, guys, we thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. My name's Albert. He's Corey. Talk to you guys soon.